Well, hello, this is Peter Combs from Bidamount.com and P.O. Combs Asian Art, located here in Gloucester, Massachusetts. And today is Friday, November 2nd. Hope you all had a nice Halloween, had lots of kids come by, and had a good time. A couple of things before we get into this week's look at last week's eBay and Catawiki auction results and what's coming up in the coming week, the weekend, and so forth. I wanted to say first is I guess this new page we added, folks like it. I noticed looking at the stats today, it's getting lots of views. People are using it, which is great. We have been updating the today auction every morning before anybody is likely to see it. We get rid of the stuff that's closed overnight or that's been sold. If it's a buy it now and update the page, and that process seems to be getting easier and easier. Okay, so if you're using it, great. All right, and here's last week's newsletter. There were some pretty good things in here, and they all did fairly well. And we'll get down to what they brought. But before we do, I wanted to get into something that happened that we thought was sort of amusing this week, and it was this. Lauren Gallery, you may remember these fellows. They're down in Roswell, Georgia. They ran their first Asian art auction last spring sometime. And we did a fairly critical view expressing our opinions about the items they were selling, that they weren't authentic, and they're fairly obvious to us anyway, copies. And their lawyer sent us a cease and desist letter. We heard from somebody, I think it was Roswell, the auction at Lauren Gallery, back when we first published the video in the blog. But their lawyer at King and Yanklin down there, their young attorney, sent us a nice nice cease and desist letter. And if you double click on it on the page, you can come and read it. And they're claiming that we published a series of articles attempt to smear Lauren Gallery's otherwise stellar reputation and constitute slander and all this nonsense. Maybe the lawyer doesn't realize the company's only been in business at that point about 4 or 5 months. So I don't know how they could have a stellar anything. But regardless, that was his opinion. And we wrote him back, and we very nicely said, look, if if your client can point to any errors or misrepresentations or things that we've done wrong in our opinion piece, let me know. Okay, we're happy to work with you. I mean, we write nice things about auction houses all the time that do good things, and they're not always big auction houses, though we do tend to focus on them because they have the most expensive stuff. But at any rate, it brought up this conversation over on the forum because we posted the issue of their cease and desist letter over there, and the topic of the protections that auction houses have when it comes to selling fakes. And I thought this would be a good chance to really explain what it is. I am an auctioneer in Massachusetts. I've done auctions here for 28 years. I have a license and all that stuff, and I don't do many of them anymore because they're not as much fun as they used to be, but we still can do them. And we used to do a lot of them. And one of the things I wanted to point out to everybody that most people don't understand this is that all auction houses, like the Lauren Gallery, this is theirs, no statement regarding age, condition, kind, value, quality of lot, whether made orally or at auction or at any time or in writing, a catalog, or elsewhere, shall be construed as an expressed or implied warranty, representation, or assumption of liability. And then you often see the term, all items sold as is, where is, period. And they actually think that basically if they say that, they can list things as anything they want, and they have no liability. And I'm just here to tell you that's absolute crap, okay? So if you get ripped off by an auction house, you do have a very strong leg to stand on if they've misrepresented it, because the term as is, where is, has in almost every jurisdiction in the country that I'm aware of, the courts say as is, where is, as represented, okay? In other words, you can't advertise something is a bicycle if it's actually just a bicycle wheel. And for example, in the case I used here, you cannot advertise an item as, for example, if you're selling jewelry, presidential day-date 18-karat gold Rolex watch. All right? If a person bids on that, based on that description, whether they see it physically or not in person, and they get it and they find out it's not a Rolex watch, it's not 18-karat gold, it's just a cheap knockoff from Hong Kong, that buyer has every right in the world to get a refund under the use of the protections of the Uniform Commercial Code, the UCC code, which is the overarching code that covers all transactions in the United States, pretty much with the exception of Louisiana, which has their own rule book. But at any rate, in the case of Lauren Gallery, for example, if they created a listing and it said Qianlong style, pay attention there, double gourd form vase, Qianlong rainmark, that's not a misrepresentation. They're saying style, okay? That gives them their out if somebody should buy it and come back and say, gee, it's not Qianlong, it's a later. And they said, well, we said style. We didn't say how old it is. However, this is where they are in hot water for this. They don't say that. They say Qianlong Celadon double gourd vase, Qianlong rainmark, Qing dynasty. Okay, the Qing dynasty ends in 1912, as we all know. Qianlong was an emperor who ruled during the Qing dynasty, one of the emperors, in this sort of towards the middle second half of the 18th century. Everyone, 1736, 1796. Okay, all right, that's when it was. So any reasonable person reading this would assume, rightfully so, that this is what they're saying it is. There's no debate about it. This isn't something anybody can dance around. If you saw this description in a Christie's catalog, you would not say, gee, I wonder if it's style. No. If you saw it at a Christie's or a Sotheby's or any other big auction house catalog and they said Qianlong Celadon, that's what it is. It's an 18th century double gourd Celadon. There's no out. Okay, that's what it is. And if it turned out not to be that later and you could prove it to them, they, of course, would refund you your money and they would move on, okay? And they have made mistakes in the past and they have refunded to their credit, all right? But this is having a disclaimer and as is where is, this sort of silly talk, does not exempt them from the UCC code. It doesn't even come close, all right? So just bear that in mind going to auctions, but really hold them up to it. The other problem that Lauren has is that disclaimers in general under the UCC code, or limits or on warranties or all that stuff, are supposed to be under those laws conspicuously displayed in bold print is the typical terminology. And if they wanted a slight leg to stand on using this type of description down here, they would insert that disclaimer right underneath Qing Dynasty in bold print. They're not going to do it. It's in much lighter print, faded print at the bottom of each page. All right, that's not considered a conspicuous display by anyone. All right, and maybe the lawyer representing this outfit will see this video, and might want to go through some of the UCC code with them and explain to them that they're not exempt from the law. Okay. But that's how it works, all right? So if you want to learn more, come over. I'll put a link to the blog on this video, and I'll put a link on the on this week's newsletter. Okay, and let's get into the week, all right? All this foolish talk behind us here, okay? Some of you might remember this. This was this very nice Chinese jade that sold. Woolworths had it. It sold a few weeks ago. Well, apparently, whoever bought them they had two nice jades, didn't pay for them, okay? And I was really happy to see this. They relisted it, and it sold yesterday for $30,000, which is about exactly what it sold for last time, or more. I'm not sure. I think maybe it sold for a little less last time. But anyway, this time around, it brought more, and I hope someone pays for it, okay, this time around. But a lot of, as you know, non-payers on eBay are sort of a legendary thing at times. All right, and that did fine. And then there was this. I liked this. This was a big Kangxi plate, very nice looking one, good enamels. I love the towers and spires. Here's a picture of the back of it, classic backside of a Kangxi dish. This nice looking foot, creamy ivory color, and of course the double circle and all that business, which doesn't always mean it's Kangxi, but in this case, it is a Kangxi dish. It did pretty well. It brought $1,913, but this was a very attractive plate. Very nice. All right. And then we'll mosey over to this. This was a pair of, the seller had these up as Kangxi. I'm not certain they're Kangxi. The form in the decoration looks to me 18th century, but they're very pretty. And this could have just been, Kangxi or early Qianlong. They're times in there where people have a hard time nailing down the dates. All right, but this was a nice looking pair of 18th century vases. They did. This has held the price back here. This they had this V-shaped chip with an associated crack, unfortunately, that ran down it. Which the crack can be stabilized and that can be filled, and you're all good. But this was part of a garniture set, I'm assuming, and it brought $621. Okay, which was a pretty good buy. A pretty good buy for that. All right, and then on to this. This was a really interesting plate. It was a 19th century dish, but it's done in femme verre, and here's a picture of the back, or 18th century, early 19th century, I would guess, judging by that. Yeah, 18th, early 19th century. Nice looking dish though, and it went very reasonably. I thought $280. This is an interesting pattern. With the lady pushing the cart with somebody in it with a fan, an elderly woman, and a young boy attendant coming along behind them, and then all of these different sort of views of birds on branches, implying this is what the person in the cart was looking at, was looking up through the openings and looking at birds perched on trees. Just, a charming scene. And $280. I think that was pretty reasonable for that. It's a nice looking dish. And on to this, the jadeite handled tea strainer, sterling silver or Chinese silver, as high as grade of silver as they can get it. And this was a nice tea strainer with the squirrels and and the grapes. This is the same pattern you see on transitional period jars, the squirrels with the grapes. They used it again here. And here's the maker's mark, the Chinese maker's mark. This is a nice old thing, probably export. And it went for $662, all right? And I think that was a really good buy. I think that piece of jade, that's a nice piece of jade. And I'm going to bet if that piece of jade was sold by itself, it would have brought that much or more, okay? But at any rate, that was a good buy. I like that. All right, and then on to this. This was something that Ancient Legends Hub had up. I mentioned it because I thought the colors were so vibrant and pretty. This was sort of later 19th century covered jar. There's a picture of the bottom. But nice color. Look at how strong the colors are in that, and beautifully clear greens, nice yellow here, and it did pretty well. It brought $3,000. Okay, and this was also from Ancient Legends. They had a lot of nice things up last week. They had a good sale. All right, and they also had this. This was that really charming little cup I mentioned last week, done in the Ming style, but later, 18th century, but really nice. I thought this was just lovely. And if you're not in a position to buy one of the Chenhua ones that go for hundreds of thousands of dollars, this sure is a great little replacement. And I went for $638. Okay. All right, nice looking thing. It did have the Chenhua mark on it, just like the real ones, the period ones from earlier time, but obviously wasn't. But still, very nice, hand done. The seller felt it was Kangxi period. It might have been, but I always question those. All right. And then there was this plate, as promised last week. It hadn't closed when we did the newsletter, so I said I'd come back to it, circle back, and show you what it brings once it sells. And it did pretty well. It ended up going up just a little bit more, but this was a nice dish. This was a nice looking Kangxi dish, and it brought $7,200. I think it was at around $7,000 last week, so it didn't go up a lot more. And a couple of sellers have mentioned this to me lately. They get lots of watchers, but they're not seeing the spike at the end sometimes. Sometimes they do, but less often. I think people are placing their higher bids early. It seems to be working for some buyers I know. They go in right away and they put their bid on it. They hit it with their big number, and it seems to be working for them. Just as a hint, as I always say, always leave a bid. But some number of buyers I know are putting their best price down right away, and they think it might help them win more lots. So food for thought. You might experiment with it. And then you had this. We've had this pattern plate before from different sellers. It's a fairly well-known one. Nice looking Kangxi plate with the immortals on the rim, and then the central field with the pair of wood ducks, symbolic for fidelity and Chinese culture as they mate for life. And this plate did pretty well. It brought $1,817, but it was in nice condition. It was in very nice condition. Okay. And then on to this was this pear-shaped sort of guglet with the cup-form mouth and all this nice brown dressing on it. This had a rather nice deep cobalt blue on it, I thought. Nice deep colors, and it appeared to be in quite good shape. There might have been a couple of little nicks on it. I don't remember. Oh yeah, there's a little fritting under here in the brown dressing. That's about it. And it did just fine. It brought $1,424, which was a good price for that. But I don't think it was an overpayment. I think that was, okay. All right, but the coloring on that was quite good. All right, and then on to this. This was that Swato turquoise ground enameled dish. All right, and this is if you go to Google image search and you put in Swato dishes, you're not going to see this pattern, okay, very much. I went the other day to see if I could think. I've seen them before, but I was wondering if any were readily available. I was thinking of doing a comparison on them, and I couldn't. But this is what it is. This is clearly what it is. And here's a picture of the back with the typical gunky mess on the back of Swato dishes. This is what they all seem to look like, at any rate. But very folky, very nice. And look at this. It went for $348. Okay, I think this was a very nice buy because this is a fairly rare. Swato dish is not particularly rare, but this coloration is, I think, much rarer than blue or some of the ones that have iron red and greens and so forth. But just this nice clear green, I think, was a good thing. Okay, and then on to this. This is a more typical Wan Li dish. But very nicely done. This one had some good colors. And Wan Li dishes sometimes can have creatures like birds or grasshoppers or something in the middle, or deer, and they're sometimes not painted very well, and they're kind of sloppy looking. This is a very sort of cartoonish looking bird with these great big feet, and but very clearly done, and good control of the cobalt through most of the plate. Sometimes they bleed out, they bleed through a lot of places. This has good clear outlining, nicely done. Here's a picture of the back. Okay, very tidy actually for Wan Li, but it is a Wan Li dish, and it did pretty well. It brought $760. It had a slight bit of warpage according to the seller and minor frits, but Wan Li dishes are often warped. They're prone to that because they were provincial wares. But that was a nice thing. Okay, and then over here on Catawiki, they had this plate. This was, I think, one of the good buys of the week. This was a great looking plate. Unbelievably pretty, just so pretty, with the mandarins in the center, neatly done with lots of good, strong negative space, and then, the Buddhist tassels hanging down, and then an outer border of cartouches with blue cobalt enamel framing floral scenes. This was a nice plate, okay, very good. And it went for a bargain, $117, okay? That was a great buy. That was a really nice buy. That's an interesting plate, okay? And then onto this was the Kangxi Rouge de Fer plate. You've seen these. They made quite a few of them, but this was a perfectly good example, and had some minor edge issue or roughness. Something happened a little bit up in here, but nothing significant. These shaped rim plates, the Kangxi period, tend to have lots of frits and lots of nicks because they got very thin at the rims. And it went for $302, which was a perfectly reasonable buy. It was about 9 inches in diameter. All right. And then looking on, we're going to take a look at, this figure here, the seated Buddha that sold last week. I wanted to mention that. Here it is. It brought $1,324, okay? These seem to be coming down a little bit in price compared to what, so if you've waited to buy one, now is maybe a better time to buy one than 3 or 4 years ago. A few years ago, these Buddha figures were bringing probably close to double that. But I think maybe the Chinese buyers that were driving the price underestimated how many of these were made and shipped into the West. We did a collection that we sold a few years ago. It must have had 20 of them. All right. Any rate, now on to this. This is ending in a. I'm not logged in, so it keeps asking me to log in. This nice Tang pottery figure. It's got a thermoluminescence test. This is a good figure. And it's 40 centimeters tall. That's a big one, okay, of the court lady, the woman. And very nicely done, and nice pigment still on it. Lots of good pigment. If you like early pottery, this one does have the TL test, and it looks okay. And visually, just right off the bat, it looks fine. And it's up to $3,000, and it ends on Sunday. But if you like those early wares, that's a nice figure. I think it's beautifully shaped. And they also have this very nice little sort of like a vinaigrette bottle that's been fitted out of a Kangxi jar with this silver flame, twist flame, cover on it, lid. It's up to $113. I would assume it's going to go up. If you haven't gotten a Catawiki account yet, come over. Somebody emailed me this week, a friend that buys on here, has been trying to buy on here. For some reason, they're kind of slow on the uptake to answer email requests. And I did contact them and spoke to somebody there who has some say. And I said, you've got to answer your requests with questions, especially for things like dimensions if they're left out of the listings. They're working on that. I know they're trying to get better at it, but they really should. There's no reason not to respond to any request in more than 12 hours. Okay. All right. Now on to this. I gave him a little lecture. All right, this is a nice Wan Li porcelain dish, beautifully done. This is really well defined. This is a beautifully defined dish. Really excellent quality with the scrolls in the center and roux heads and precious objects and tassels and all that. This is a very attractive dish. It is, what size is this? It's 35 centimeters, so it's about 13 and a half inches. About 14 to 15 inches in diameter, big one. It's up to $1,113, and it has again, it closes on Sunday, it looks like. And then they have this, if you've ever wanted these Kangxi dishes. This is a nice Kangxi dish. It's not terribly big, but good decoration, very typical of that period. There it is, all right. And there's the back of it, classic, okay. This one has a little more kiln grit than most of them do, but not by much. And it has this sort of draped glazed smearing that you see here, the way it's shaped like that, sort of like curtains, all right. And it's up to $182, which would be a real bargain, okay. If you like early Ming, 15th century Ming pieces, that's a nice object. All right, and there's also this nice Kangxi to Yongsheng period Dotsai dish, nice pattern on it. It's up to $220. And then over on eBay, I threw this in for fun. These are great. I like these. These are big bamboo reticulated hangings. All right, and they have this Four Seasons on them apparently. And I'll take their word for it. I didn't have. My wife can read this stuff, and I didn't have her check it, but I'm assuming they're right. But nice quality carving in the bamboo. Okay, at a glance they don't look it, and then when you really look at the details, these are nicely done. All right, these would be fun to hang in a hallway or in a den or something, or in your house. And they close on Sunday. They're up to $20. Okay, and the shipping from Georgia to here, for example, in New England, is only $49. So. Those are great, and these are big. Look how big the Coke can is. These are probably three or 4 feet or so, 3 feet or so tall. All right, I think that those would be fun to have. All right, and then on to this is this very nice Japanese oribe dish. If you know anything about Japanese pottery, this is a nice piece. Okay, this is a nice piece of oribe, early one. Here it is. Your nice clear cloth marks. How it was shaped on the sides, the bottom. They had some curling in the enamels when it was fired, obviously. But this looks like a good old one to me. And it's only up to $24. It closes next Wednesday. So if you're a Japanese buyer and you like old oribe, you might look at that. Okay, that'll be in the newsletter. And this very pretty large pair of Famille Rose vases that hasn't closed yet. I mentioned them last week when they first went up. I still think they're very pretty. These are 13 inches tall each. They're nice mantle size, and they're up to $307 US. Let's see how they do. They should do better. All right, and then there's this nice-looking pair of 18th century molded, possibly Kangxi period square vases. But these are good looking. Nice looking pair of vases. Okay, they don't have their lids apparently, but nice looking vases, and they're only up to $73. Okay, one of them has minor restoration on the foot, and this is Kangxi 0219, the seller, and he describes things quite well. He's an accurate describer, as they say. And this is also on, if you're a Japanese buyer, is this Ad Asian Art's got this. This is a nice piece of Arita, very typical of the early plates, 18th century plates and earlier, with a spray of flowers or sometimes just a pine tree or something, and then a nice big negatively spaced background, and then a beautifully decorated border, okay? And that is, let's see, where is that right now? Oh, you scroll up. It's one of those. All right, it's only up to $11. It has a reserve on it. The seller typically doesn't put huge reserves on things, so it might be for $150 or something. But that's a nice looking plate if you like early Japanese Arita. All right, and also this little Kangxi bowl is on this end. This is a nice one, a shaped rim, sort of like a Clampetts bowl, but a little bit different. It's only up to $2, and why I don't know. It's closes on Tuesday, and that's a nice bowl worth looking at if you're a blue and white collector. And then our friend Freak over in the Netherlands has this nice bronze up. We featured it this week. I like this. It's one of these arrow vases. Nicely done. Looks like it might have had the base plate might have been touched up or soldered to stabilize it at some point. But this is a good old bronze, a good honest old bronze, in that nice cocoa color and nicely cast. It's a good bronze. All right, he gets good bronzes, and it's up to $167. Closes on Sunday. All right, and then last is that big Chinese silk hanging with the dragons on the frame. This is quite a thing. I think this is great. Okay. They're calling it a tonka. I don't think it's a tonka. I think it's a hanging, but that's okay. At any rate, it's up to $3,050. It closes tonight, so you may not see this in time, but we'll leave it on there. And we'll let you know next week what it brings. But this is a very pretty piece of silk. We featured this week because I thought it was just great. All right, so that's it. So check out the forum. Subscribe if you haven't already to us here on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up if you'd like. We always appreciate those. Leave a comment. Come over to Bidamount.com and sign up for the newsletter. Join in on the forum. Meet some of the folks over there. Take part. Lady called me this week. She had a bunch of things she wanted opinions on, and I was in the middle of doing a million things. And I said, go over to the forum and put them up. They'll give you answers. Okay, and I hope you feel the same. You do the same thing. All right. So have a great weekend, and we'll see you all next week. And hopefully we'll get the November London catalog video up this next day or so, and maybe today. Hopefully, there's a lot in it. And have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you all next time. Bye bye.